There was a smudge on the elevator mirror. Not just any smudge, a faint, slanted fingerprint over a streak of red lipstick. I stood there, frozen, watching the doors slide shut behind me, sealing me in with the scent of something so familiar it made my stomach twist. Santal 33. Her perfume. Not something generic. Not something you'd mistake for anyone else's. It was hers, down to the last synthetic floral molecule. This was his building. Her ex's building. I wasn't even supposed to be there. I was only dropping off a charger my coworker left in my car. That's it. A quick in and out. But then I smelled it. Saw the smudge. Noticed the faint glitter on the floor of the elevator. Same kind that clings to her cheeks when she doesn't wear makeup. My heart didn't sink. It flipped over and landed upside down somewhere in my ribs. I took out my phone and opened our messages. Nothing from her in 5 hours. Last text. Still at Maya's. Having wine and waffles LOL. Wine and waffles. I stared at the screen while the elevator climbed to the 14th floor. She said Maya's place. Maya lives in Beaverton, 25 minutes away. This was downtown. This was Milo's building. Milo, the jazz drummer with a crooked smile and a voice like warm whiskey. The guy who once posted a photo of her in his hoodie at 3 a.m. with the caption, "Some ghosts stay." The guy who once told her he'd never stop writing songs about her. The guy she swore she blocked. The elevator stopped at 14. I didn't get out. I just stood there, breathing shallow, trying to unsmell the evidence. But it was everywhere. In the mirror, in the air, in my teeth somehow. Then my phone buzzed. A message. From her. "Babe? You up? Can I come over? I need to talk." Talk. She hadn't been home. Hadn't answered. Hadn't even lied well. Now she wanted to talk? I didn't reply. Instead, I waited until the elevator hit the ground floor, stepped out into the cold night, and just stood there in the parking lot under the flickering streetlight, trying to piece together a version of the evening where I wasn't being slowly erased by someone who said she loved me. And I realized something right then. She was never at Maya's. She never planned to be. And whatever she was about to say at my door the next morning, it wasn't going to be the truth. I didn't sleep. I stayed in my car the rest of the night, parked across the street from our apartment, engine off, keys in my lap, replaying every second of the elevator ride like it was the Zapruder film. I knew if I went upstairs, I'd see her face and believe whatever she told me, because I'm weak like that. Because when she cries, I feel like I'm the one who did something wrong. But I needed space. I needed one moment to exist outside the version of myself that forgives too easily and forgets too fast. At 6:14 a.m., the sun just barely bleeding into the sky, I saw her silhouette appear in the apartment window. Our window. She opened the blinds like she always does. Right to left, lazy motion, one hand holding coffee. Or maybe wine. It was hard to tell from the street. She didn't look sad or guilty. She looked normal. And that terrified me more than if she'd been sobbing. I waited until she walked away from the window, then finally turned the engine on. The moment the car rumbled awake, something snapped loose from the dashboard vent and fluttered onto the passenger seat. A hair tie. Thin. Black. Not mine, obviously. And not hers either. At least, not the brand she usually uses. She always buys those beige spiral ones that look like telephone cords. I know because I always find them between couch cushions, under the sheets, stuck to the vacuum filter. This one had glitter on it. And perfume. I didn't touch it. Just stared at it like it might explode. Like maybe it already had, and I was just sitting in the wreckage now, waiting for the pieces of my life to stop falling. Eventually, I went upstairs. The apartment was dark, quiet, but warm. Too warm. She always turns the heat up when she's hungover. There she was, curled on the couch, blanket wrapped around her, phone in hand. Her thumb was scrolling, but her eyes weren't really following, just going through the motions. She looked up, startled. "Ellis," she said. Just that. Like it was a question and a confession all at once. I stood in the doorway like a stranger. My keys jingled in my hand louder than they should have. "Did you have fun last night?" I asked. Her eyes searched mine. She didn't smile. Didn't crack a joke. That was when I knew she was still halfway inside the lie and trying to figure out how to decorate it, so I'd want to move in. "Maya and I got wine drunk and passed out watching bad rom-coms," she said too quickly. "I was downtown last night," I said. She blinked. "Once. Twice. In your ex's building. Dropping off a charger." I took the elevator. Silence. I could see it. the briefest glitch in her expression. Like her face momentarily lost internet connection and came back buffering. "That's a crazy coincidence," she said, her voice all breath, no soul. I nodded slowly, walked over to the kitchen, held up the chipped blue mug, filled it with water I wasn't going to drink. "You wearing Santal 33 again?" I asked without looking at her. She didn't answer. Just then, my phone buzzed. One new message. I glanced at the preview. It was from Maya. "Hey, just woke up. Why did Jenna say she was with me?" My hand started shaking. And for the first time in 6 years, I didn't feel like a husband. I felt like an audience member in someone else's relationship, watching the whole show fall apart from the front row. I didn't say anything after reading Maya's message. I just turned the screen face down and set the phone on the counter like it weighed 50 pounds. My legs were trembling, but I forced myself to lean casually against the edge of the sink, arms crossed, mug untouched. I could feel her eyes on me, measuring my silence, trying to decode it. But she never had the patience for puzzles. She always preferred answers served fast and convenient, like drive-through explanations. "You look pale," she said finally, as if that somehow gave her the upper hand. "You should sit." I didn't move. "You want to try again with the truth?" She stood slowly, blanket falling off her shoulders like a curtain dropping at the end of a show. Her face was unreadable now. Not apologetic, not defensive, just blank, like she was waiting to see which version of herself she needed to perform next. "I didn't sleep with him," she said. "Funny, I hadn't even asked that yet. But you were there?" I asked quietly. She nodded. One slow, tired nod, like it physically hurt to admit it. "I didn't plan to be," she added quickly. "We bumped into each other. Milo said people were meeting at his place after the bar, and I didn't want to seem weird or bitter." "You didn't want to seem bitter to your ex-boyfriend, whose building you just happened to end up in." She looked down at the floor. "It wasn't like that." I could feel the blood rushing to my face. "It was exactly like that. You lied. You said you were with Maya. Maya just texted me asking why you'd say that." Her jaw clenched, then relaxed. The wheels were turning again. I could see her scrambling to find some version of the truth that wouldn't detonate the whole house. We did end up at Maya's later. I didn't want to explain everything. It would have sounded worse than it was. "And what exactly was it?" She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Just this quiet, desperate sound, like she wanted to say something but realized she'd already used up her best lie and couldn't remember the backup script. That's when I reached for my phone again. I wasn't going to ask her for more answers. I was going to find my own. I opened her Instagram. Private messages. We didn't have each other's passwords, but she always used the same 4-digit code for everything. Birth year of her favorite author. Stupid, lazy, familiar. It opened. I didn't even have to scroll far. Right near the top, Milo. Last message from him was last night at 3:17 a.m. "You didn't have to cry like that. You know I'd never judge you." I stared at the screen for a long time, the letters blurring. My brain refused to process it all at once. Cry? Judge? What the hell had she done? I turned the phone toward her. "So what exactly were you crying about?" She looked like a raccoon caught in headlights. Still, she tried. I was drunk. It was emotional. We talked about the past. He said some things that, I don't know, messed with my head. That's all. But I'd seen this performance before. Years ago, when her cousin was caught cheating and the whole family swept it under the rug, she said, "If I ever got caught, I'd cry before the lie, not after." And suddenly, I knew that's what this was. A preemptive breakdown. A controlled demolition of the truth before it could escape her mouth and burn everything down. I didn't say anything. I didn't shout. I didn't accuse her of sleeping with him. I didn't accuse her of anything. I just looked at her, long and hard, and then walked over to the hallway closet, grabbed the small suitcase we keep for weekend trips, and set it on the couch. "You can stay at Maya's," I said. "Or maybe Milo's. Wherever you're not lying." She blinked rapidly, stepping toward me. "Ellis, wait. Please, don't do this. I swear to God, nothing happened. Not like that." I zipped the suitcase halfway shut without looking up. "You should have thought of that before you chose to disappear." Her voice cracked. "Please, just talk to me. Don't shut me out." But it was already too late for talking. Because in that moment, standing there with a stranger's perfume still clinging to my coat and her ex's words glowing on her phone screen, I realized the marriage wasn't broken. It had already been replaced. I thought that kicking her out would make me feel something. Relief, satisfaction, even grief. But all I felt was this strange hollowness, like I'd finally opened a locked room in my house and found it completely empty. No answers, no closure, just dust and silence. She didn't argue when I told her to leave. She stood there for a few seconds, trembling like she wanted to scream, but then quietly packed a few things and walked out, leaving the half-zipped suitcase and an unspoken apology hanging in the air. When the door clicked shut, I thought about locking it behind her, but I didn't. Something about that felt too final, too permanent, and I wasn't ready for that kind of silence. Not yet. I didn't hear from her for 3 days, and I didn't reach out either. I told myself I needed space, but the truth was uglier. I wanted her to suffer in the unknown. I wanted her to sit with the tension of not knowing what I was thinking. I wanted her to feel a sliver of the paranoia I'd been choking on ever since I smelled her perfume in that elevator. I thought she'd call, or show up again, or try to explain what Milo meant when he said she cried in front of him. But nothing. It was like she vanished. And the absence didn't feel clean, it felt strategic. That's when I made a mistake. I went through our shared iCloud backup. Now, I'm not proud of it. I know what it says about me. The paranoia, the obsession, the refusal to just let it go. But something about how quiet she had become didn't sit right. People who feel guilty usually apologize. People who feel caught tend to disappear. I needed to know which one she was. There weren't any messages. No photos. Nothing suspicious on the surface. But in the Notes app, hidden between grocery lists and recipes, was a draft of something, dated the night of Milo's party, titled, "If I Tell Him Everything." I opened it. It was short, just a paragraph. If I tell Ellis everything, I'll lose him. But if I don't, I'll lose myself. I didn't plan for anything to happen. I swear to God I didn't. But it did. And now I can't stop shaking. I don't know if it's guilt or fear. I don't know if I want to be forgiven or just punished. My blood turned cold. I read it 5 times. 10. 100, maybe. Memorized it. Parsed every syllable for some hint of what it was. A kiss? A confession? A full-blown affair? I didn't know. And that was the worst part. She'd admitted something happened, but left it undefined. That kind of omission isn't mercy. It's cruelty. The next morning, I woke up to her knocking on the door again. Not crying this time. Just standing there. Eyes puffy but dry. She looked like she hadn't slept, hadn't eaten, hadn't stopped thinking. I let her in, mostly out of curiosity. She sat on the couch like a guest in her own home, hands clutched together like she was praying for something she didn't believe in. "I know what you found," she said softly. "The note." I didn't answer. I didn't send it. I was going to. But I froze. I panicked. "What happened, Claire?" I asked. Her bottom lip trembled. She looked down at her lap. Then she said something I wasn't prepared for. "He kissed me." I didn't stop him right away. The room went still. Even the refrigerator seemed to pause between cycles. She continued. "It was a second. Maybe 2. I pulled back. I told him it was a mistake. That I'm married. But I didn't tell him no until after he did it." My chest felt like it was caving in. My heartbeat was loud in my ears. I wanted to scream, to punch a wall, to erase the last 2 minutes from my memory. "But you didn't tell me that part when you came back." "I was ashamed," she whispered. I didn't even know how to explain it. I kept thinking if I could pretend it didn't happen, I could just get past it before you ever knew. "That's not how marriage works." She nodded. "I know." Silence stretched between us again, until I said the one thing I'd been holding in for days. "You talk in your sleep, you know." She blinked. 2 nights before the party, I said. "You said his name." "Not Milo. His real name. The one no one else calls him." Her face drained of color. "And you smiled," I added, "like you were dreaming of something better." She covered her mouth with both hands, like she wanted to stop herself from breathing. I stood. "You didn't just slip, Claire. You drifted. Slowly. Willingly. And you didn't come back until you got caught in the current." She didn't argue. She didn't cry. She just sat there, still as a painting, while I walked to the door and opened it wide. "If you want forgiveness," I said, "you're in the wrong house." Claire didn't fight me when I told her to leave. She just stood up slowly, looked around our apartment like she was seeing it for the last time, and walked out with her head down. No suitcase. No speech. No last-minute plea for mercy. And I didn't follow. I didn't watch from the peephole. I didn't check if she turned back down the hall. I just stood there in the stillness of the doorframe, breathing like a man who'd been underwater for too long. I wanted it to feel like a victory. It didn't. It felt like someone had removed a tumor but left the wound wide open. For the next 2 days, I kept myself busy with stupid things. I reorganized the pantry alphabetically. I cleaned the oven, even though we barely use it. I threw out an old blanket that still smelled like her shampoo. Anything to avoid the living room. Anything to avoid the couch where she confessed to being kissed. Anything to avoid the silence that hummed louder every hour she didn't call. On the third day, Maya texted me. Just one sentence. You should check her shared album from the weekend. My stomach turned to glass. I didn't even know Claire had a shared album. She always kept her photo storage tightly controlled. No auto backups. No cloud syncing unless absolutely necessary. But there it was, tucked deep in her photo app, a hidden shared folder labeled Archives, something I'd never noticed because she'd hidden it under a decoy email address that wasn't hers. There were only 3 photos in the album, but it was the 4th file, the one I almost missed, that destroyed me. A video, 46 seconds long. It opened in low lighting, the camera unsteady. There was music in the background, live jazz, muffled. Milo's voice laughing off camera. And then the frame turned toward a rooftop lounge. Claire was sitting on a bench, red dress, drink in hand. Her knees turned toward him like the rest of the world didn't exist. She was smiling. That full, uninhibited smile she used to save just for me. The kind of smile that lives in old wedding photos and early memories and slow dances in the kitchen. At the 12-second mark, he leaned in and kissed her. Not quick, not stolen. A slow, heavy, open-mouthed kind of kiss that doesn't belong to exes or old friends or drunk mistakes. She didn't pull away. Not until second 27. She touched his face. She shook her head. She said something I couldn't hear over the music. Then she stood and walked away, leaving her drink behind. And that was it. The video cut off mid-frame. I don't remember breathing after that. I don't even remember sitting down. I just remember the buzzing in my ears and the ache behind my eyes and the way my heart didn't even shatter. It just stopped bothering. The video was time-stamped, 1:04 a.m. The same time I was pacing in our bedroom, texting her, calling her, thinking maybe she'd been mugged or passed out or had her phone on silent. She was kissing him while I was worried about her safety. That's a very specific kind of betrayal. One that rewires your memory of the entire relationship. One that makes you question every single "I love you" that ever left her lips. I didn't call her. I didn't forward the video. I didn't scream or rage or throw anything. I just sent one message. You were never supposed to let him film that. Within 2 minutes, she replied, Ellis, please let me explain. I didn't open it. I blocked her number. And for the first time since this whole nightmare started, I felt something close to peace. But it didn't last long. Because the very next day, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I let it ring out. They called again. Then again. On the 3rd time, I answered out of pure exhaustion. It wasn't Claire. It was Milo. Hey man, he said, voice calm, casual, almost smug. I think we should talk. There's stuff you don't know, and I don't like the idea of her rewriting history. I wasn't planning to meet him. The idea made my skin crawl. Sitting across from the guy who kissed my wife while I lay awake believing she was dead or drunk or cold on some sidewalk was obscene. But the way Milo spoke on the phone, the ease in his voice, like he was in control of a narrative I didn't even have access to, it unnerved me. I couldn't stop thinking about his last sentence. I don't like the idea of her rewriting history. I agreed to meet him in public. Neutral ground. A dim, undercrowded bar on the east end of the city that didn't serve food, didn't play music, and smelled like burnt citrus and bleach. It was the kind of place where secrets felt safer. I got there first and ordered club soda, just to have something to hold. My hands were shaking slightly, and I hated that. I didn't want him to see me anxious. I wanted to appear composed, in control, like someone who wasn't bleeding under his clothes. He walked in exactly on time, wearing a charcoal coat, too much cologne, and that same crooked grin he always had in photos with Claire. But what struck me most was how calm he looked. Not apologetic, not even defensive, just interested. He sat across from me, didn't bother to order anything, and leaned forward like we were old friends catching up. I didn't come here to fight, he said. Good, I replied. Because I'm not here to listen to a PR pitch. He smirked, nodded once, and leaned back. Fair. So let me just say this, and you can walk out after if you want. You think she made a mistake that night, right? Something impulsive. Something out of character. He paused, waiting to see if I'd confirm. I didn't. I didn't need to. My silence was an answer. He continued. But she didn't just end up there, Ellis. She reached out to me 2 weeks earlier. Sent a voice message at 2 a.m. Said she'd been dreaming about the summer we spent in Santa Cruz. About the yellow car we rented. About the rainstorm. She remembered the damn rainstorm. You know how specific that is. I felt like someone had dumped cold water down my spine. Claire never mentioned contacting him. Never said a word about reconnecting. Not even as some stupid emotional lapse. In every version of her story, she was just there. Unplanned, unexpected, momentarily weak. But Milo kept going. She told me things weren't great with you. That you'd become distant. That you worked too much. That she didn't feel seen anymore. He air-quoted the word seen and rolled his eyes. Classic emotional priming. She didn't come to that rooftop by accident. She came to confirm something she already wanted to believe. I wanted to argue. I wanted to call him a liar. But he wasn't saying anything ridiculous. He wasn't exaggerating. He was speaking with the kind of confidence that only comes from knowing the other person will never admit it. You know what really messed with me? He said, his tone dropping a little. After we kissed. Yeah, I admit it. I kissed her, and I don't regret it. She pulled back and said, this doesn't mean I don't love him. Not I can't do this. Not this is wrong. She made it about you, not us. I stared at the condensation forming on my glass, watching a single drop race downward like it was trying to escape the silence that followed. I thought you should know, he said finally. Because she's gonna come back. She always does. And she'll cry. And she'll say it was a moment of weakness. But the truth is, it was a moment of clarity for her. She didn't cheat on impulse, man. She tested a theory. I stood up. I couldn't sit there any longer, not without smashing something. I didn't say a word as I walked out, but I heard his voice behind me. She's not a villain. She's just selfish. Big difference. The night air hit my face like a slap. I kept walking, fast, not even sure where I was headed. I needed to breathe, to think, to undo everything I had just heard, but I couldn't. It stuck. Not just the words, but the way he said them. Calm. Final. Like the truth was a card he'd been holding until it was time to win. By the time I got back to the apartment, it was nearly midnight. Claire was sitting outside my door. No suitcase this time. Just her. Hoodie, leggings, bare knees tucked to her chest like a child in timeout. She looked up at me, her voice barely audible. I know you saw it. The video. I didn't respond. I know you met him. Still nothing. Then she said the quietest sentence of the night. One that changed everything I thought I knew. I didn't tell you the worst part. Because I didn't want you to hate me. She paused, her lip trembling, eyes shimmering under the hallway light. But I think I might deserve it. I didn't speak. Not right away. Just stood in the doorway, staring down at her. My hands were clenched so tightly in my jacket pockets I could feel my fingernails carving crescent moons into my palms. There was a time when I would have dropped to my knees the second I saw her cry. When I would have cupped her face and told her we'd figure it out, no matter what it was. But that version of me died sometime between the elevator ride and the shared album. She waited for me to say something, anything. But when I didn't, she slowly stood up, wiped under her eyes with her sleeve, and said, "You're not going to invite me in, are you?" I shook my head. She swallowed hard. "Then I guess I'll just tell you here." I almost stopped her. Almost told her I didn't want to know, not because I didn't deserve the truth, but because I wasn't sure if I could survive it. But curiosity is cruel like that. It masquerades as courage, even when it's just a mask for masochism. She began speaking, slowly, carefully, like every word was a landmine she had to step around. Milo wasn't just a moment, and it wasn't just a kiss. But it wasn't an affair either, not in the traditional sense. I didn't interrupt. I just stared at her, watching her lower lip tremble between sentences. I've been talking to him for months, on and off. Not every day, not even every week, but enough. Enough to start missing who I used to be around him. Not even him, really. Just that version of me. The girl who laughed too loud and danced barefoot and didn't pay bills or fight about thermostat settings. She looked up at me, her voice breaking. "You want to know the worst part? It's not that I kissed him. It's that I liked it. I liked being wanted again. I liked not being someone's wife or someone's responsibility. I liked disappearing into nostalgia because reality started to feel like a punishment. That's when the nausea hit me. Real, physical nausea, curling in my stomach like something was rotting. You didn't lose me that night, she said, barely above a whisper. You lost me months ago. You just didn't notice. Or maybe you did, and you hoped ignoring it would make it go away. That last line hit like a hammer. Not because it was untrue, but because part of me had noticed. I remembered the way she started staying in the shower longer. How she wore perfume less often around me. How she switched her phone notifications from banners to private. I noticed all of it. I just didn't want to confront it. I thought if I kept loving her hard enough, deeply enough, loyally enough, she'd find her way back. But love isn't a compass. It doesn't guarantee direction, only presence. I didn't sleep with him, she said suddenly, as if she could still salvage something. We didn't go that far. I swear. I met her eyes for the first time since she started talking. That's not the part that hurts anymore. She blinked, confused. It's not what you did, Claire. It's what you wanted to do. It's what you missed. I paused. And it's the fact that you never once looked back at me while you drifted. She opened her mouth to speak again, but I stopped her. I met him, I said. He told me everything. About the voice message. About the car. The rainstorm. You remember the storm with him, but you couldn't remember to pick up my migraine meds last week. Her face flushed with guilt. That was the thing about Claire. Her expressions always gave her away. No matter how carefully she spoke, her face betrayed her. I don't hate you, I added after a long silence. But I don't know you anymore. I opened the door behind me, not for her to come in, but for her to leave. And she did. No screaming. No promises. No tears this time. Just footsteps fading into the hallway. After she left, I stood in the living room and looked around. Everything felt the same, but nothing looked familiar. The couch we picked out together. The framed photo of us in Prague. The ceramic bowl from her aunt's wedding. It all felt staged now, like props from a play I didn't realize was fiction. I sat on the couch, exhausted, staring at the blank TV screen. Then I remembered the suitcase. The one she left behind the day I first told her to go. I hadn't touched it since. I stood up, pulled it from the corner, and opened it. Inside was a sweatshirt of mine, 2 books she never finished reading, a travel charger, a makeup bag. And at the bottom, folded neatly, was the Santa Cruz postcard. The exact same one she and Milo had sent each other back when they were 24. The one she claimed she threw out years ago. And written on the back, in her handwriting, was a single sentence. There's a version of me that never left this place. Sometimes I wish I could go back and stay there. 2 months passed. I didn't see her. I didn't hear her voice. The last thing I received from Claire was a letter. A real, physical letter, handwritten, folded into 3 perfect sections, postmarked from a small town I didn't recognize. It arrived on a cold Monday morning, wedged awkwardly between a gas bill and a coupon booklet. I didn't open it right away. I left it on the counter for 3 days, unopened, untouched, like it might lose its sharpness if I gave it time to dull. When I finally read it, it wasn't what I expected. No grand apology. No elaborate retelling of her pain. Just a quiet, honest reflection. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know I've started therapy. Not for you. For me. I spent so long trying to be someone for everyone that I stopped asking what I needed from myself. I think I broke us before you ever had a chance to fix it. And for that, I am deeply sorry. There was no return address. And that was okay, because by then, I'd already started putting myself back together. It didn't happen all at once. Healing never does. It started with the smallest things, things that wouldn't make sense to anyone but me. Like buying new sheets. Not because the old ones were dirty, but because they smelled like her skin. Like silence and arguments. Like endings. I replaced the chipped blue mug with a simple gray one. No inscription. No memory. Just something to hold coffee without holding grief. I started walking every morning before work. Same route every time. Down past the bookstore, through the park, across the bridge with the rusted railings. I'd never noticed how loud birds were at 7 a.m. Or how much early light glows golden before the world wakes up. It made me realize how many beautiful things I'd ignored while trying to hold together something that was already gone. One morning, on my way back, I stopped at the little cafe near the corner, the kind I used to call too slow because I was always rushing home to make her breakfast. I sat down, ordered a coffee and a croissant, and read a paperback I picked up from the used bin out front. A few minutes later, someone asked if they could sit across from me. I looked up. She wasn't Claire. She wasn't trying to be. Her name was Quinn. She was an illustrator who worked freelance from anywhere with good Wi-Fi and decent espresso. We talked for maybe 20 minutes. She had freckles across the bridge of her nose and spoke with a soft but deliberate voice, like someone who thought before she opened her mouth. I liked that. We didn't exchange numbers that day. It wasn't like that. But I ran into her again the next week. Same cafe, same table, different book. She remembered my name. And the second time, we sat longer. I won't pretend it was some perfect beginning. I wasn't ready for love. Not yet. But I was ready for something small. Something honest. Something with no history attached. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't measuring someone against my past. I wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop. I was just there, in the moment, breathing, listening, laughing, even the kind of laugh that comes from your ribs, not your throat. I still think about Claire sometimes. Not with anger, not with longing, just with quiet understanding. She wasn't evil. She was lost. And maybe I was too. Maybe we both were. And we just happened to collide on our way to becoming strangers again. But I don't hate her. I don't wish things had turned out differently. Because if they had, I might never have started walking. I might never have looked up at 7 a.m. and noticed the light in the trees. And I might never have sat at that cafe table long enough to realize. I was never broken, just paused.